I'm Ryhor Nizhnikau and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. The results from the elections in Moldova are in, and the incumbent President Maia Sandu has claimed victory in what seems to be a major victory, not just for her, not just for her supporters, but also for Moldovans' aspirations to join the European Union. And yet these elections were partially overshadowed by attempts by external forces to meddle in their results. So what's going to happen now? And how will these elections actually prove to be a bit of a case study, perhaps, for the future efforts to secure the integrity of electoral systems? We'll be examining that with our guest today, Ryhor Nizhnikau, senior researcher at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello.
So first, let's begin. Maia Sandu's victory, of course, is a major boon for all the pro-European forces. But is this the end of the story? I am referring specifically to the election calendar in Moldova, which actually has another major turning point in 2025.
Exactly. It's just the beginning. And the next election, the parliamentary election next spring, will be much more important for Moldovan future, for Moldovan integration. And what we might see is that this Sandu's victory might be a Pyrrhic victory, that actually it will just open the path for the opposition, for the pro-Russian forces to clinch the parliamentary elections and form the government next year.
Would you say that we might be seeing more election interference? I mean, it might seem to be a rhetorical question, but will this particular moment in history for Moldova merely serve as an incentive for Russia to try harder and distort election results? Because when it comes to election interference, there is ample evidence that they did try.
Well, absolutely. Russian factor was important. Russia did make a lot of effort to influence the result. We know how much money was spent, but again, I would say the main reason why we are so worried about Moldova, about its future, and why pro-Russian forces have really an opportunity to win the next election is basically the situation in Moldova itself, that the state of the Moldovan economy, politics, society. The fact that Sandu won but lost the vote inside Moldova itself is a good indicator. So in this regard, Russia is obviously eyeing and will provide even more resources to win next election, but the main factor comes from inside the country. It's unreformed, poor, and unfortunately very corrupt, something that Moldovans are absolutely unhappy with.
So these are the problems that any populist could actually try to exploit, right? They can point towards corruption, they can point towards the issues with the economy. What about the outright election interference? Can you tell us more about the methods that were applied in the course of these elections?
Well, when it comes to the methods, you are totally, well, there are a plethora of methods. So if we look at basically two elections in Georgia and Moldova, we do see that tactics are a bit different, but the main reason is in Moldova, it's mostly, Russia was mostly buying votes via Ilan Shore. So we do know that they were just offering money, and then a lot of other methods such as, bringing the voters, inducing them, bringing them to the voting booth, basically. So that was the main method in Moldova. And the big money, I mean, the case is that if somebody wants to sell his vote for 50 years, which might damage the future of their country, I mean, primarily not Sandu's election, but the vote on the European referendum, this is, again, clearly a bad sign.
So what methods could be used to tackle this? Because we're talking about this, as you've mentioned, in the context of Georgia also, which we'll be hopefully coming back to in a moment, but also in the context of how Russia may try to interfere, with elections in other countries further west, right? Because they obviously see this as a window of opportunity. So what methods could be used in order to counter these attempts? are our criminal law systems in particular, our penal codes, well equipped in order to basically create a bulwark against these sort of methods and tactics?
Well, first of all, to exactly answer this question, we need to consult the lawyers. My take on this is very simple. Russia uses the tactics based on the domestic situation and the quality of the domestic political institutions. And here is the key word, because what we see in Moldova is that, if your country is so badly governed, if we go back 4 years ago, when Maia Sandu was voted in the office, Moldovans were promised, and this is what they voted for her, promised actually finally have a good governance, get rid of corruption, reform judiciary, law enforcement. This didn't happen for different reasons. And this creates this opportunity for Moscow to interfere so badly in Moldova. Luckily, in democratic countries, be it Poland or United States, its situation is much better. So in this regard, Russia uses different methods. So we do see how it actually tries to affect a U.S. election through obviously using the problems which exist in the United States, polarization, and so on and so forth, mostly through online platforms. How you can counter that, it's, again, always depends on a case. In case of Moldova, my main argument always is reform the country, build the institutions, exactly create the judiciary which will not sell the future of their country for a bit of money.
Well, specifically when it comes to the attempts to buy votes, who is actually held accountable in these cases? Because if we assume that someone who actually takes the bribe might actually be taken to court over that, well, that perhaps presents some opportunity. But if it's solely the one offering the bribe, you may have a guy like Ilan Shor, who is outside of, of our jurisdiction, because he is right now based in Russia. So there is not really that much you can do. You can obviously, issue some sort of arrest warrant. That's not going to be enforced because he's actually not leaving Russia, knowing that, he may face problems. So what if a guy like that appears on the political scene in Western Europe and says, well, we're offering sweepstakes, we're offering incitement to vote, and, can we actually do anything about it from a legal standpoint? Should people who take these bribes also be held liable for doing so?
When it comes to, let's look at the case of Ilan Shor. I think it's exactly a very, very important. And indeed, Moldova can't do anything, but Moldova can't also do anything when it comes to people who serve as intermediaries because of the absolutely failed judiciary and prosecutor's office. So it's not absolutely, but with a lot of problems there. But look at, for instance, the case of comparison with Shor, Elon Musk, right, who offered in Pennsylvania this lottery system where if you sign up, etc., you'll get $1 million US. And we immediately see the reaction of the US authorities, which basically say it's interference, it's actually illegal, and we already have the court action. So this is the difference. So as long as we do see the same with any type of a Russian hybrid threat, as soon as we see this, we do see immediately in the Western democracies a reaction from the system. When it comes to people, this is a slippery path because, I think, unfortunately, if people want to sell their votes, this is, how they speak about their country, about how they make their choice. But, they make their choices in a different ways. And this is, then it's a sad truth about a certain country and state of their democracy. But I don't think this is something that can be really penalized because it's a path towards, probably curtailing the liberties. And if you should have a liberty also to probably to do with your vote what you want. The fact is that the people who want to do that to you should be punished. But again, this is this is a very interesting question.
So there is another point that was raised quite recently, is that it was actually the members of the Moldovan diaspora whose vote proved to be decisive. What would you say that tells us about the state of democracy? Because apparently, if it wasn't for their votes, Maia Sandu's victory would not actually have been assured. It could have gone very differently.
Very true, and we do know also that in the previous round, the European referendum was won only because of the diaspora vote, and it's not about democracy as such, because well, if you have the law which allows your diaspora to vote, it's fine. It's more of a state of Moldova. It's one of the biggest problems is the polarization of the country and the fact that basically the diaspora and Moldovans are so different. So they have absolutely different views on their future of the country and what they want from this country. And this is one of the multiple problems. Again, it's a case of we're talking about the poorest country, which did try a lot in the last 4 years, but we do see it's absolutely beyond what it needs to be done or needed to have been done.
So it is clearly not over for Moldova. However, we have a very positive indication right now of the election victory that despite Russian interference, democracy can still prevail. Ryhor Nizhnikau was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'm Alexandr Stoianoglo. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.